And we are back live. This is your Bolo Punch Boxing Hour, brought to you by George Rogie Insurance. www.bolopunchboxinghour.com. Streaming to you, as always, on Ustream.tv. Timmy, the producer, Patterson, if you could be so kind as to please let our listeners know how they can get in touch with us tonight.
Oh, you're going to acknowledge me now. You started off doing the whole introductions and didn't introduce me at all. So.
Oh, my God.
Hit us up on the hotline, 219-743-9743. Yahoo Instant Messenger is up and running. I can see you, Chris, even though I got my back to you, buddy. It is keyword Bolo Punch Boxing Hour, but the best way to reach us is in the chat room via Ustream.tv, keyword Bolo Punch.
We have a bone to pick with Oscar De La Hoya. And we've got the former host of Fight Club Radio, the MMA guru, Eric "That Guy" Gibson. Timmy, if I can ask for a favor, can we get Eric in the shot, please? Because he most definitely needs to be part of this.
Yeah, go ahead, cut me out. You're gonna have to work. You're gonna have to actually do some camera work during this section.
I think that
you guys are gonna have to scoot in a little bit.
Just to set the stage as to why I'm even bothering with this. They call Yankee Stadium the house that Ruth built. Well, the Staples Center is slowly becoming known as the house that Oscar De La Hoya built because of his great fights and his great attendance at his fights that have happened there since Staples Center started just a few years ago. It's not very old. It's not a very old building.
Yeah, he was actually known for the biggest crowd ever in attendance there.
And Shane did it without him. Actually, Margarito did it without him. Those were mostly Margarito fans this past Saturday night.
Which Margarito is not far from LA. He's from Tijuana. So
immigration showed up after the fight, and they only had about 6 or 7 people left.
He was actually... Oh, don't start with this stuff. Oscar's got a giant bronze statue of himself, actually, right outside. This is an LA fight. He is an LA fighter. I mean, this was an LA crowd. Everything about this event was LA, except for the Golden Boy not being there at all. He wasn't there. He was down on the other side of town at an Affliction show. For those of you that don't know, because you're real boxing fans, Affliction is a recent start. Oh, I did not call it a sellout. Someone did. Someone here called it a sellout.
Well, he might have been saying. They might have been saying that the fight.
That Oscar might have been.
No, this fight was a sellout.
Oh, like sold all the tickets?
Yeah.
It's possible.
That Oscar was a sellout.
That's like the nicest way of putting that.
The Mosley Margarito or the Emelianenko Arlovsky?
Probably both. Probably both.
Exactly.
What I know is it was a very big event. Yeah, I thought I was right, Little Holmes. I thought so. Thank you for calling me. Anyway, with this being such a big LA event, you would assume that Oscar would be there, but his new business venture is being part of the promotion with Affliction, which put on this Fedor Emelianenko and Andrei Arlovsky fight that was down the block.
Arlovsky, a proud Chicago native.
No, Belarusian. He's from Belarus.
Yeah, but he
trains in Chicago.
Yeah, he lives in Chicago.
Yeah.
Oscar not where he would be expected to be. By the way, another really cool thing about this, in the front row, you had Sly Stallone sitting right next to Arnold Schwarzenegger. When do you see those two in the same?
I have to chime in here.
Why?
And because you're right now saying somewhere that Oscar would be expected to be.
I keep getting sidetracked. That's the only reason.
Well, and I just want to comment on that is, number one, first and foremost, does Golden Boy Promotions, did they have anything to do with the Mosley Margarito fight other than the fact that Oscar's a boxer?
No.
Okay, so
100% there. No, we're talking about how wrong you are. No.
What?
Mosley,
okay.
Mosley, Hopkins, and Oscar.
Now see, I don't know that I can be wrong for asking a question because I asked if they were, and you just said you couldn't be more wrong.
You're wrong for being in the room right now.
I guess. It's already started.
No.
So what's the deal?
You were wrong way before you entered the room.
What's the connection?
No. Oscar is the promoter of that event.
Of the boxing match.
Yeah, absolutely. Oscar was the promoter of the event.
And they're actually partners with Mosley and Hopkins, who were, Mosley was the one that was in the ring.
Okay.
Yeah, and Bernard Hopkins was sitting ringside. So two of the three boxers that run Golden Boy, Bernard Hopkins, Shane Mosley, and Oscar De La Hoya.
Well, there you go.
The one who started the whole thing, the one that the promotion is named after was not.
So you had 2/3 representation at the boxing, right?
Absolutely, but the one that it's named after was...
Okay. So you have 2/3.
One of them's got a statue, Eric.
2/3.
Stop.
2/3 at the boxing event.
All right.
And one man who is trying to get his promotional company into the mix in mixed martial arts. He goes there.
Yeah.
What better way to do that than show up at that mixed martial arts event, have your face shown, which most real MMA fans, not casual MMA fans, but most real MMA fans know who Oscar is.
Shane fights twice a year.
They see his.
He needs to be there those 2 days.
Okay.
2 days a year.
I guess you made up your mind and you won't listen to anything.
It does make
He
sense.
does need to be there.
Wait, here's my question.
I do understand where your point of view is.
Here's
He's
my
trying to
question.
grow that company.
Hold on. Here's my question, guys.
You guys logged on to a hell of a show, by the way.
How
This is
much
a good one.
bigger does it need to grow?
Hold on. I got a question here.
Go ahead.
If you're the promoter of Mosley and a huge, trying to get into the other MMA thing, why did you set it up for the same weekend?
He didn't set it up.
But hey, if you're the promoter, why did you get it set up for the same weekend?
It's not like he decided
The
that.
thing is
He has very little to do with it.
Obviously, did not
Other
hurt.
than money.
Who decided what date the fight was that Mosley was fighting?
Oscar set that up, probably.
It obviously didn't hurt in the attendance factor in either one of these venues because both of them were sold out. The only
Right.
thing that it could have hurt is possibly pay-per-view buys.
Maybe.
Fight to the finish right now in the Bullet Punch chat room says, I predict Affliction will go out of business before the end of 09. Affliction doesn't know how to promote their own cards. And this is obviously someone that doesn't just watch boxing. That's my guess.
And a lot of people have that. A lot of people have that view. Most people expect any promotion other than UFC to go down.
Okay.
I mean,
And that is why they brought
that's the
Oscar
trend.
in. I believe that's why they're bringing
You
Oscar
bring in a big name. You bring in Golden Boy Productions. You bring in a
Oscar
big name
also
like
knows how to
Oscar.
promote.
And yeah,
He's got the cazadores.
He's got
the freaking money.
He's a fighter. He's a fighter who owns promotion thing. That is something way different than having Dana White do the promotions.
He's a fighter that owns Ring Magazine.
right.
One sanctioning body that everybody thinks is not corrupt, that does all the rankings, he now
And
owns
he
it.
owns it. So I mean, as far
But
as
it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, there's no conflict.
as far as the MMA side goes, I think that Oscar's face being there can only help it. And it's going to help that side of his company, by being there. Now,
Do you really think, now, and this is nowhere near my real question to you, but this is one of a dozen that I have for you tonight. Now you are a diehard MMA fan, but you have an open mind. You're much better than just okay, I don't want to say that.
I don't have any elitist attitude.
You don't.
I don't
You
think
don't.
that MMA. I don't think that MMA can exist only in the absence of boxing and vice versa.
There you go.
Both
And that's why I respect you, and that's why you're actually here today. If I thought you were just a dumbass that thought MMA was the only sport there was, I wouldn't have bothered. I mean, I know plenty of those guys. I know plenty of those guys.
There are a lot of
yeah, I don't need to name their names.
there's a lot of people that want to argue that MMA is better than boxing or boxing's MMA better than MMA, but the way I look at it is they're two completely separate
They're
things.
different sports. They just happen to be in two places where people try to hurt the other one.
And I honestly don't think MMA is as much of a sport as what boxing is. I think it's more of a fight, in which I do give them credit. It's more of a fight than what boxing is.
They use more weapons. That's
Yeah.
all.
And boxing is more, I believe, more of a sport. You
that was gonna be worse.
could break it down a little bit easier and predict who's going to win a little bit easier than what you can in MMA.
I wouldn't say that it's any more or less of a sport, because they're both fight sports. Like I said,
they're both.
the goal is to get in there and hurt your opponent, make them stop. Boxing pretty much does it by knockout. MMA has a couple other ways and everything, but the goal is still the same: to stop your opponent.
I have to jump in
By
because
hurting them.
we're not here to debate which one is cooler.
No.
That's definitely not why we're here. What we're here for is I want to talk about the what I have characterized as a dumbass comment made by Oscar De La Hoya. He's over there at the Affliction event, where full of diehard MMA fans. They ask him, so why are you here, Oscar? Is it just the money, or do you really want to get involved? And he says, oh no, I want to be involved with MMA. And someone said, well, you don't plan on putting the gloves on yourself. He goes, oh, no. I'm about ready to retire from boxing. But what I do want to do is this. I want to go ahead and I want to get, and by the way, Oscar did not get paid
$5
to
million.
be. He did not get paid for that affliction fight. Don't even bother saying that.
$5 million was what everybody was saying.
Everyone was saying that it's not based on truth. I hope
What's
I
it
didn't.
based on?
No, that's not based on fact. He was not paid. He was not paid.
It's a rumor that's going around.
I mean, it's part. He has paid, if anything. He's the one that has paid for the right to be there. But they asked him, "Do you want to fight?" He said, "No, I've got a thing I want to let you know, though." He says, "I am in the middle of making plans to take a group of young, elite, up-and-coming boxers, and I want to make them into MMA fighters and bring them up under the banner of affliction." Which right off the bat is going to piss off boxing fans, because you're taking taking our future.
The elitist boxing.
You're taking the eggs and saying you're not going to grow up with your real mommy.
We're going to take you with this.
You're not
going to
grow up to be chickens. You're going to grow up to be cows.
You're going to. Okay.
That's kind of what's going on. Is you're not
Wings or steaks, which I like them both.
Wings with steaks.
Yeah.
Put 'em on the barbecue.
But
We're good to go.
we're going to take the eggs, the elites, not elite, but the up and comers,
Right.
and we're gonna train you over here in MMA. Now, Oscar might be onto something, except for what he said next. He said, and I want to say it right. I'm quoting him now. "If we can get some of these boxers while they're still young, we can make them MMA champions," De La Hoya said. "The boxing and the stand-up is the hardest part. We have to give them a year to learn the grappling. Obviously, to be a good MMA fighter, you've got to be able to fight standing up on the floor." So basically what Oscar's saying is that all we have to do is take a young guy who is proficient in boxing, give him 1 year of grappling training, whatever the hell that is, and he'll be great at MMA. All we need to do is take a young boxer, give him some ground game, which we can do in just 10, 12 short months, and he'll be able to compete on the same level as these guys.
There are boxers that have switched over, including Pulver, who just fought last weekend.
Jens Pulver.
And
he got beat pretty quick by.
but he's also an age fighter at this point.
He's
he made his money early on. Many years ago, 5-10 years ago,
Yeah.
he was a bigger name than he was. But I mean, last year he had a great fight that was up for fight of the year with the same guy.
Oh, same guy. Yeah, he's the only person to go 5 rounds with Uriah Faber.
Yeah. So I mean, didn't show up this weekend in his ability, but in the past it has. I mean, fighters have done it. Switched over from boxing and came over to MMA.
Sure,
But
it has happened. But
you can't just learn it in 1 year. Obviously, Pulver had some kind of training before he just switched over.
And that's kind of my thing here is that, I'm saying, give them a year. Are they going to be champion grapplers? No. Can they be proficient enough to step in an MMA, ring? Yeah, they can.
And that is what angers me.
Well,
that is why you're here. Because I cannot. I don't believe I'm defending MMA against an MMA guy.
In case anybody listening, isn't aware, I have 12 years of wrestling experience.
Yeah, I didn't even give you all your props. Go ahead and explain why you're.
Plus, I'm a 3rd-degree black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and Taekwondo. I teach martial arts at the University of Notre Dame. I've been in, the cage.
You like rolling on a mat with guys.
Yeah. So I understand the game for more than just
Why did I know
casual
that was
spectator.
I have to give a dig to Gibson.
You are most definitely the most knowledgeable MMA guy I know, and that is why you're here. But why am I the one defending MMA? And you're saying, well, yeah, give a boxer a year and he can be fine.
I
think that spits in the face of everyone that is
in gold.
Everyone that is devoted their life to training on the mat, being proficient in chokes, and joint manipulation, and submissions, and all these crazy moves and whatever, joint locks and whatever.
Well, Brazilian
the people that devote their life to doing that are ready to twist your head off for saying that you think a boxer with 1 year of grappling experience, whatever the hell grappling experience is,
Depends on whatever.
can get in the
Depends on
octagon.
what
I will
techniques you
say
want to
this:
learn.
let them. You want to twist my head off then? Because I look at it as maybe they're not being completely realistic. They want to hold themselves up to this standard when maybe that shouldn't be done.
I want to put MMA fighters on a bigger pedestal than you are.
Any great wrestler wants to sit there and say wrestling is the greatest sport of all time, and that's the only thing that matters. Any great boxer, what's going on right now with boxing and MMA, they don't want to admit that there might be some good stuff going on in MMA or vice versa, MMA to boxing.
Thing is, in wrestling, you don't get a chance at the brass ring being a wrestler. You either are in these NCAA tournaments where you destroy your ears, essentially is what it is. It's an ear destroying.
Even with the headgear.
Or you're putting on hook shoes and wearing a goddamn cape. So there is no.
That ain't wrestling.
All I'm saying is there's only two things to do.
Ask Brock Lesnar about that.
As a grown man, though, there's only two wrestling avenues.
We're talking, yeah, there are only two different avenues, but grappling is part of wrestling. Grappling is part of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's not the whole thing. You have a statement in here about Gracie, you being ticked off, whatever, because of this being said and stuff. Well, I think Gracie would tell you grappling's part of it, but not all of it. I didn't spend my whole life practicing just grappling. I spent my whole life practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, let's say that these guys that Oscar's going to switch over from boxing, they're going to be elite athletes that he wants to switch over.
Right.
How long do you think it would take for some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has become the big name in MMA of what you want to learn to be able to become a champion in that sport? Now, how long do you think it would take an elite athlete to work through the belts?
To work through the belts? It depends. And this is what it depends on.
First fight, man. First fight.
Well,
this heavyweight champion.
I know what you're saying. This is what it depends on. It depends on time devoted to it.
Well, I'm saying elite athletes, and they usually put the time in.
Exactly, and that's what I was thinking here with the year. If you put a professional athlete, professional fighter, who trains in grappling for a year, they devote a lot of time to it. It's not like, I don't look at professional athletes as going to a 9-to-5 job or 9-to-12 job or 9-to-9 job.
You have Oscar De La Hoya backing you, putting money in your pocket.
Right.
Oh, you'll believe anything that smile makes for you.
No, but you also have a lot of resources when you got that money backing you.
Sure. Fight to the finish says the Irish hand grenade, Marcus Davis, was 17-0 as a professional boxer, and he switched to MMA and is now quite successful in the UFC.
There you go. Evan Tanner, dead now. But, to give you some idea of grappling ability, and, he had never wrestled up until his junior year in high school. And his junior and senior year in high school, he was state champion.
Yeah,
in Texas.
There's actually a fighter.
That's a bigger state than most.
He had never wrestled until his junior year, and he was state champion junior and senior year. After that, he quit. After that, he stopped wrestling.
Kermit Cintron was a very good wrestler in high school and decided to go the way of boxing. And he's 30-2. Only has 2 losses to the guy with the stuff in his gloves, Margarito.
Yeah.
And he's going to be fighting a tough fight here on the 14th against Martinez. And if he does not do good in that fight, he's actually been talking about switching over. So.
Well, yeah, and here's something else. A couple other names to throw out there. We all know that Chuck Liddell has a collegiate wrestling background. How much of his wrestling comes out in the octagon except for his takedown defense?
I hope
that much.
Great. You hang that on your wall.
He wins his fight by strikes. He has that background, but he only uses the takedown defense. One itty bitty little part.
How much does Chuck Liddell fight? How much does he weigh?
205.
205. So he's
that's what he fights at. He's light heavyweight.
Yeah, that's not. Their weight classes are way different.
I'm just saying, if he was to become a boxer tomorrow, the top 30 guys would knock him out within 3 rounds.
Okay. Now, what if you gave Chuck?
Give Chuck 1 year.
1 year to train in boxing. We're not talking stepping in from scratch.
You're right, absolutely. Then the top 25 guys would knock him out. I'd give him 5 more guys. I got to let Nestor jump in on that one.
I completely disagree with you on that.
You know what, and I do too, because I'll tell you something.
Are you with me on this, Nestor?
Well, I disagree with the 25 guys.
Well, then that would say no. No, you don't. You don't agree.
Here's my thinking with this. We're talking about professional athletes.
Right.
Now, you know what? I'm not talking about some schmuck that jumps into the ring and calls himself a professional fighter or a professional MMA fighter who some fat slob like myself who decides to jump in and want to fight one fight and go, yeah, I'm a pro. No, I'm talking about guys that do nothing but train and
Now,
work. Natural
let's talk about
born athletes. We're talking about guys that, some of these guys can play any sport they want and do any sport they want and be good at it. Not great, but be good.
Michael Grant.
I would.
The guy I want to bring up is
With
Arlovsky.
some training, they could be very good.
I would say that it's a whole lot easier, guys, for an MMA guy to switch over to boxing. I think an MMA guy to switch to boxer could do that in a year.
Well said.
Quicker than an MMA guy or a boxer could switch over to MMA.
Because
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Because the way I see it,
he's going to want to lift his legs.
You have guys. You have guys in the MMA that have trained in nothing but martial arts their entire lives. Boxing is such a small part of MMA.
Boxing is almost no part of MMA.
Well,
It depends on how you get your striking ability.
There's a guy in Arlovsky who has built his career on striking. He's one of the best strikers in MMA.
It's a different kind of striking, though. But you're right. You're right.
And he actually trains in a Chicago gym with Freddie Roach, with David Diaz, who's lightweight champ. He trains with these kind of guys that teach him how to strike correctly.
He's actually considered. Arlovsky's actually considered stepping in the boxing ring also.
That's why I
brought it up at one point. But
that's fine. Guys, there is a difference between a stand-up game in MMA and boxing.
Right.
Because stand-up game in MMA,
you don't think
in 95% of the stand-up game in boxing, and you're going to bring up one fight. That's why I gave you 95 and not 100%. But the boxing that happens in an MMA octagon ring, whatever, is missing the key element of boxing in a boxing ring, and that is the jab.
Well, there's also the huge effect that when you're in MMA, you have to be worried about the takedown. When you're trying to strike, you always have to be worried about the takedown.
Timmy's totally right there.
Legs
but yes, you're worried about a lot of other stuff too. But if I'm throwing out a jab in boxing, I don't have to worry about that fool grabbing it and yanking me down.
Right.
Yes.
But it's a completely different setup.
If you can use it.
To say boxing is an element of MMA is not correct.
It can be.
Just
like wrestling can be an element of MMA, but wrestling is not MMA.
True. No.
Boxing is not wrestling can be an element.
Wrestling fits because there is no. There are parts of wrestling that will that you couldn't do in wrestling that you totally can do in MMA. Like, you're not going to spend too much time on your back in wrestling, otherwise you won't be in wrestling. Otherwise, you're not a very good wrestler because you're getting pinned every time.
Exactly.
In boxing, you're relying on that jab 95% of the time.
I understand that, but that's why we consider a lot of these fighters, they need to be, this word, keyword here, adaptable.
Sure.
MMA,
you adapt real quick when you're eating jabs.
Instead of using a jab, they use a kick usually, which actually keeps you farther away.
Jab can be used with a kick as well. You're absolutely right.
So that's actually, in most MMA events, that's what you see is them using a kick as a jab.
Now, you know what, the one fight, Chris, that I'll bring up, BJ Penn and Sean Shirk. BJ Penn jabbed the hell out of him, the whole time, and he kept him at bay and was basically able to enforce his will over Sean Shirk just using that jab and messing him up like that.
Yeah.
Another one that...
The second Holyfield Bow fight, a guy came down in a freaking parachute with a fan. So can I assume that'll happen pretty often?
What's the relevance here?
I'm saying weird stuff happens once in a while.
I'll say this, just recently, and the jab wasn't used so much as the uppercut was, but the Mir Nogueira fight.
Well, that's all.
Mir used a little bit of the jab, but then really worked that traditional uppercut and beat the crap out of Nogueira when no one thought he was going to do it.
Well, a lot of that has to do with style, though.
Traditional boxing.
An uppercut in a clenching situation.
This wasn't they weren't really in a clench.
Uppercut actually works better on a timing event, for somebody, because as they're stepping in, a lot of times they'll lower their head.
Right. But you got to do something else with it. In a fight, you got to do something else with it. Otherwise, somebody's going to key in pretty quick. Okay, he's going to uppercut me now.
Unless you're Andre Pinto.
Now we know the difference. Now we know the difference, kids, between MMA and boxing, which we already knew. Well, my point is that I am angry with Oscar for saying that you can take a decent boxer, give him 1 year of grappling, and make him into an MMA fighter.
Well,
that pisses me off.
If that pisses you off, with the vast experience and knowledge you have of grappling, how long does it take?
I have no experience in grappling.
So then why are you pissed at me for saying, you know what, 1 year ain't too far off if it's a professional athlete and that's what they do is train in grappling? to be proficient enough to step in an MMA ring. We're not talking about these guys stepping up and fighting, you know, I can't use Brock Lesnar because he pretty much did just that. Stepped in, third fight in, you know, UFC and wins the championship. But we're not talking about these guys doing that. We're talking about them stepping in and starting to compete in MMA.
What I think you're really missing, Chris, is the fact of Oscar. Chris, you're missing this. Oscar's resources. You got to remember that these guys are already trained. They're already in shape. They're ready to go.
Trained for boxing.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Different sport
It
altogether.
doesn't matter. They're trained and they're trained to go.
Michael Grant was trained at stuff.
These guys are
What the hell good did he do?
These guys are trained to go in a short interval at full speed and to be able to keep doing it on a continual basis. So a boxer to me is going to be probably in better shape than an MMA guy. So a boxer that's going to MMA, if he can learn the ground game, and Oscar's going to have that resources, and you're not talking about a guy that's going to do it a couple hours here and there. You're going to talk about a guy that's going to put 60 hours a week in to learn that.
Right.
He's going to learn that within a year. I think Oscar's pretty close to being right.
No. And I think that's disgraceful to real MMA fighters.
I don't.
If you have devoted your life to fighting,
I'm not saying he's going to be.
I bet they're glad that you're speaking.
He's not going to be the expert of it. I mean, he's not going to.
They don't care that I'm speaking for them.
He's not going to be the Hoist Gracie of it and know every little detail of every little move. I'm not saying that, but he's going to have enough of an understanding that he can go in there and fight with the top guys.
Hell, 99% of the UFC right now are, you know, world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys anyway. You watch when they throw up their proficiencies and everything in the corner and when they're coming to the ring. And like I said, about 99% of them is either, you know, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, world champion or Abu Dhabi world champion or something like that.
What you're forgetting,
maybe
though,
they're
Chris,
diluting it themselves as far as what it means. I don't know. Like I said, I wrestled for 12 years. I've been doing that, and I don't have this bug up my rear end about how great I am because I wrestled.
Chris, you can be 8-4 in MMA and be going against the champion. I mean, you don't have to win every single match.
I think just because of the pure fight advantage that you have, the pure fight aspect that MMA holds, where people do get knocked out a lot more often than what they do in boxing, and your losses get racked up. You can just get caught by a kick. I mean, probably about 85% of the fights that I watch in MMA end in a knockout. So these guys do have lesser records than what they do in boxing. In boxing, if you lose one fight, it sets you back 2 years.
Mm-hmm. I'm well aware.
MMA fighters seem to fight more often also.
Yeah,
you know,
well, MMA, it doesn't set you back quite as far as...
You're not fighting as many rounds. You're not fighting... Well, you may be fighting a little bit longer per round, but...
Rounds are longer.
3 or 5 rounds.
Championship rounds are longer, but regular fight rounds aren't. Regular fights are 3 minutes.
In MMA, 5 minutes. In the larger promotions, anyway, 5 minutes, you know, regardless. Now, in a championship
I watch
fight,
WEC
5 rounds.
more than I watch...
Even WEC, it's 5 minutes.
For the championship fights.
All of them.
No, it's 3 minutes for the It's
Are
weird
you
because
sure?
I'm not positive, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that they change the minutes per round.
If I was an MMA fighter and I heard pretty little Oscar De La Hoya saying, all my boxers need is a year and they'll be right in the same sport you guys are in, do you know how pissed I would be?
You know what?
Chris,
Let them be
hold on,
pissed.
wait,
That's
Eric,
fine. Let them step in the ring, and some of them are going to lose, and some of them are going to win.
But
that's just the odds.
What Eric's saying is there's guys that are champions in other sports, in kickboxing, and they come over, and in a year they're fighting for a title, which that just happened last weekend. I mean, it happens all the time.
Brock Lesnar, like I said, he jumped over from professional wrestling. He wasn't even...
Well, yeah,
you know,
he's been in a lot of different sports.
He was a collegiate wrestler.
And he was also a collegiate football player and tried out for the Vikings last year and really made the team.
Right. But I'm just saying, he had 3 fights. He stepped in there and did it.
That guy is an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he's the exception.
George St. Pierre.
Every rule you have.
George St. Pierre, you know, had 2 years ago maybe he had no formal grappling training, you know, except for what he got here and there and stuff. And he was, you know, they were considering, you know, having him wrestle on the Canadian Olympic wrestling team.
Oscar was saying by that statement is he believes his sport could prevail in
he believes that they can come in, give his fighters some more weapons and compete.
I mean, here's a thought for you, Chris. I mean,
stop talking to me, Tim.
Hey, Chris,
there are 5 people in this room, Tim. You're only talking to me, and I hate that.
Hey, Chris, if I said in 1 year I could be an art teacher, would you be upset with that? Just think about that. I mean,
I would be upset at the school that hired you.
Well, yes. I mean, one, I can't spell, and two, I can't draw, so I'm screwed both ways. But I understand.
Yes, I would. How's that? Yes, I would.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? And if I'm an MMA guy, I'm gonna be mad that saying a boxer could be, could learn my profession in one sport. And if
but if there was
two arguments. One, I would be mad if I was in MMA, and I heard someone saying that. Two, I'd be more mad that it was Pretty Boy Oscar saying it. It does matter who says it. Someone who has no idea what I go through as an MMA fighter every day. Someone who has no idea, but sees dollar signs.
It's different because Oscar is a fighter. That's much different.
Oscar is a boxer.
Than you saying it takes a year to learn grappling.
Exactly.
Because who are you except a boxing coach?
Who is Oscar?
He's a fighter.
He is not an MMA fighter. He doesn't have the first damn
He's
clue.
A professional athlete.
He doesn't have the first clue what it takes to get in an MMA ring.
Not even though he knows, a promotion that's doing MMA stuff too. So maybe he knows a little bit.
Doubt it.
I'm willing to bet he knows more than you.
Get Nestor in there. Nestor's got something.
I doubt he knows any more about it than I do.
He is a professional
He can hire
athlete.
people that know.
He is a professional athlete.
Now, if that was a bowler saying that,
I don't call them athletes.
my God, in a year they could be.
I can learn how to throw bags.
Yeah, that doesn't. That's
But you're not a pro.
But we're talking about a professional fighter. Whether he fights MMA, whether he fights boxing, whether he's a collegiate wrestler, I don't care what he is. He's a fighter. That's the whole point. They train in some fashion in a similar sense.
We cannot have it both ways, boys. We can't say they're two different sports, but they're also only a year away from each other too. You have to pick one.
Well,
they're either different sports or they're not.
You've got to understand that a professional football player has some understanding of what a professional basketball player goes through. It's two completely different sports, but they have some understanding of what each one goes through.
I know we'll get away from that otherwise.
Look, I understand what you're saying, and
I win. That's it.
And I realize
you're right. You are right, Little Holmes.
And I realize that in some way and in some fashion, I would probably be upset at the fact that I trained all my life to be an MMA champion, and he's thinking that 1 year gets these guys to be at the same level I am.
That's what based my entire argument.
Did he say the same level or not? Or did he say they could compete? There's a difference. I can compete in a sport. Doesn't mean I'm good at it, but I can compete. I played tennis in high school. I played third base in high school. I played middle linebacker in high school. Doesn't mean that I was a very good athlete, but I competed. Now,
get a participation ribbon? I can do that.
But you're saying that Oscar's saying that these guys are going to be world champions, can be world champions in a year. Yeah, I would be upset if I was an MMA fighter and talking like that, but I don't think that's what Oscar said. Oscar said that they could compete. There's a difference. Eventually they could be probably very good.
Right?
Eventually they could be MMA champions with more experience in the ring. It's like a boxer. You don't start boxing in a championship level, do you?
Well,
you start fighting in the amateur ranks and you work your way up.
Well, most boxers cannot compete in professional boxing unless they've been doing it since they've been a small child. The champions that are coming.
The heavyweight division is the only division where big, strong guys can just show up and do well, especially with the heavyweight division we've got now.
And these guys, again, aren't going to jump into a championship situation after a year. That's not going to happen. You know it as well as I do. That doesn't work that way. They're going to have to build their experience and build their way up. But can it be done? It's possible.
Eric, is the boxing and the stand-up the hardest part to MMA?
No.
That's what Oscar said. Right there, in the orange.
Okay. He also said,
Oh, okay, we'll just skip over that. He also said...
I'll tell you what.
He also said, I whooped up Pernell Whitaker, and he didn't do that either.
If you don't go into mixed martial arts with some striking ability these days, right now, as mixed martial arts stands right now, you're going to be hurting. 5, 6, 7 years ago, you might be able to get away with, not having much striking ability. But the way things go, you know, the ebb and flow here of mixed martial arts, right now, stand-up is kind of predominant. So you need that. I just had to put this really quick. You said, you know, earlier, and I had to write it down so I remember because I knew we'd get away from it, but you're talking about, you know, MMA, boxing, not the same sport, you know, you can't have it one way or another. Well, you know, you can still make the comparison. Because, you know, you can say boxing, you know, close to MMA, or is bowling close to football. Now,
I didn't use the bowling
they're all
analogy.
sports. No, but you said that, you know, boxing and MMA, not the same sport. You know, they're both fight sports. They're both fight sports.
Yeah.
You know, just like, you know, there are similarities.
In
sure
football
are.
and rugby. Maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say. You have similarities there, too. They're not the same sport, but you can sure draw on a lot of it. You know, I know a lot of, you know, football players, older guys, you know, guys who play collegiate football, whatever, that go over to rugby when they're not, you know, when they're done with college. So, I mean, you know, you can make a comparison there. Now, you know, it looks like in the thing here, Oscar says we can help make them MMA champions. Okay, they can help make them MMA champions. You know, he says,
Yeah, their know-how and my money.
give them a year to learn grappling. Obviously, you know, to be a good MMA fighter, you've got to be able to fight standing up and on the floor. So he acknowledges that you have to do both.
The boxing and the stand-up is the hardest part.
Okay, that's his opinion. That's his opinion.
You don't think that's a little bit elitist?
Sure it is. Sure it is, but it doesn't mean...
He's the boxer. He's saying my sport is the hardest part of your sport.
And
That doesn't piss you off? Oh my God, dude.
No, because it wouldn't take me off if a wrestler said, wrestling's the hardest part of MMA.
That I would agree with. That I would say.
Why do you agree with that?
That I would agree
Why
with.
is it okay to say one
Because
and not the
90% of MMA is on the ground. That's why I
What
would
did I
agree
just
with
say?
that.
Eric is
Not
saying the sport
anymore.
is changing.
Not anymore. 7 years ago, yeah. Right now, it's mostly stand-up. The guys, you know, like I said, it's mostly stand-up now. People are looking for the knockouts. People aren't even, you know, necessarily happy with good submissions anymore. They want to see knockouts.
And some
so most
guys,
of
when
these
they
are
get
training more stand-up.
Sometimes when they get the guy on the ground, they let him stand
They
back
let
up
them up because they want to stand up and they want to rock and roll on their feet.
If I am a MMA agent and I get to choose between letter A, a collegiate wrestler door number A, a collegiate boxer who wants to become an MMA artist, and door number B.
Door number B.
Yeah, bucket number.
So
A wrestler versus a boxer, both want to be MMA. Which one am I choosing? I'm going with the wrestler just like you
you're
would.
saying it's easier to train a boxer to punch than it is to train a puncher to wrestle.
What I know is, whatever it is, it sure ain't getting done in a year.
Okay, but that's what you're telling me right now.
It's not getting done in a
I'm-
year.
I think he's saying
I'm
there's-
saying in the landscape of MMA today, it's going to be easier for a boxer to spend a year on grappling and come in to do it than a wrestler.
I think what
who
Chris
only
is
spends a
saying
year
is
in
most MMA guys don't
punching.
have the technique of throwing punches.
No, they don't. Most of them don't.
And
most of
you
them
can get
don't.
away
Wrestlers
with
don't
wrestling.
train to throw blows.
No,
Mark
wrestling-
Coleman did a hell of a job
Wrestlers
in
train to stay
MMA.
off their back, which in MMA is a bad thing if you
Well,
try
I'm not
to flip
even
over
just
your
saying
stomach.
wrestlers. I'm saying MMA altogether. Most of them don't have the technique of throwing
Right.
punches that they need to have
Right. Well,
for
it's
a boxer to have.
it's a matter of, you know, you've heard the saying, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of MMA. You know, now,
Yeah.
you know, if you got a guy that trains in solely MMA, which you have fighters starting to do that now. They were just talking about it on the last WEC, I think. You know, Joe Rogan, oh, this is a unique thing because this guy just trains in MMA. He doesn't train in Shotokan or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or anything. He just trains MMA. Well, there you have it. You know, jack of all trades, master of none. So what happens when you get one of these guys that is a master of something and then trains to be a jack of all the other trades?
He spends more than a year on it. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back at you. This is your Bolo Punch Boxing
You spend
Hour,
more than a year.
brought to you by George Rogie Insurance, www.bolopunchboxinghour.com, streaming to you live, as always, on Ustream.tv.